Call the Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. The Minister has now resumed her seat in the chair, and I'm asking her once again to answer the questions: why is this bill being introduced? Why now? And why does it apply retrospectively? And why was there no consultation with anybody other than a couple of government departments and her own? Will the Minister stand up and answer those questions? Because I know at this moment Grey Power are listening to this debate. They've already contacted members of this House, and they are waiting to hear from the Minister why she did not, when she meets with them on a regular basis, raised with them the issue of asset testing, knowing what a sensitive issue this has been over many, many years. When the National Party introduced asset testing, it caused an outrage around New Zealand. And this government should have known when they were going to change it that there would be many people who would want to know what research, what evidence did they have in terms of what the effect would be. So I say, Minister, earn your money. Stand up and answer questions that have been put on this side of the House from the parties who are participating in this debate. I say to a person like Paul Hutchison, who's a man of compassion, why doesn't he stand up and tell this House why he thinks taking 4.5 million off the most vulnerable people in our society is a good idea? Tell us, Dr Hutchison, why doing it secretly is such a good idea. I don't believe that's something that Dr Hutchison would have supported, and I suspect the backbench of the National Party had absolutely no idea that this policy was going to be introduced. They had no idea a bill was going to be put on the table of the House, and they're nothing more than fodder. They're fodder for the National Party. They have to stand up and defend it. Now, Chris Ockenvale, I say to that member, also a man I think that is a thinking person, what does he think about this bill? How does he feel about being used by the Cabinet to defend a measure I guarantee he had no say in? This caucus, the junior whip would have heard about this measure was when it was taken to their caucus just before the budget was read. Just before the budget was read, they would have gone in and said, and by the way, you'll have to stay here on Friday because we're introducing a bill which is going to change the asset testing in New Zealand. That is what they would have done, and so the cannon fodder on the back benches there are expected to leave this House and go out and defend the decision to all the older folk around New Zealand where you're going to find it heavy weather. And the first argument they're going to put to those new backbenchers who don't seem to be worried about it, they're going to say to the backbenchers, why didn't you consult us? Why didn't you ask us and tell us that is what you were going to do? Why couldn't you actually have the decency and the honesty to go out and ask us and say to us, we're thinking about changing the asset testing regime. There's a number of ways we could do it. We could leave it as it is, we could do it by the CPI, or we could do it in a number of other ways. What do you think the impact would be? And if you were to talk to Grey Power, at least they have got a big base they could go to, a large number of members they could go to and ask what they thought. So this is a particularly sneaky piece of legislation. I don't think I can think of a more sneaky piece of legislation in recent times because it is, and Mr Ockenvale's laughing about it, and I'm sorry that he's doing that, because he doesn't obviously think it affects the older folk in New Zealand. You see, the people who this does affect aren't the wealthy people. Those who have money have no problems when it comes to paying for rest home care. It doesn't worry them at all, but it certainly worries those who have the least, and they're the ones who are affected. Get on your feet, Minister, and answer some questions. That is your job.
Mr Chairman.
I call the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr. Chairman, I want to pick up where my colleague